Perhaps the challenges were inevitable. I was a natural scientist, physics to be precise, while Tilly was an economist, firmly rooted in the social sciences. Although neither of us worked in those fields, our college majors revealed a lot about how we each viewed the world. I believed in absolutes, not in everything, but there are many truths that hold regardless of the situation, like natural laws such as gravity. Tilly believed in truths as well, but her mind always left room for exceptions, even for gravity. It's always true, Till. Gravity is unchanging. So far, but you can't believe that in this infinite universe there's not a single place where it might not hold. Not a chance. Then we would laugh. Neither of us ever convinced the other, but we relished the exchange. In that way, we had a strong marriage. We weren't aiming to compete with Gates or Bezos for wealth, but I got into big data management through actuarial analysis, while Tilly managed a sales team of 24 at a rapidly expanding regional brokerage firm. We were financially secure, both for the present and the future. We owned a beautiful 4-bedroom home with a pool and hot tub, and we co-owned a cabin up north with Tilly's sister Margie and her husband Nate, giving us a getaway spot when summer arrived and temperatures soared. Our older daughter, Annette, or Annie, had just started first grade, and our younger daughter, Kylie, was just outgrowing her diapers. Not only were they both incredibly adorable, but they were also full of energy and well-behaved. I had been dropping hints about wanting a third child, maybe a boy this time, but Tilly wasn't as keen on the idea, which was fine. She was the one who had to carry the babies, and it took her nearly 2 years to regain her fitness after Kylie. I understood her reluctance, and it wasn't a deal-breaker for me. And as for our intimacy life, I don't believe there is such a thing as bad intimacy, and I definitely enjoyed the moments when we were together, whether it was in bed, on the couch, in the hot tub, or even in a hammock, although it required a little more caution. We may not have been the most adventurous lovers, but we weren't shy either. Our marriage was well balanced. There were times when I took more than I gave, like when I was focused on a big project at work or when Dad had his stroke and Mom needed my help. But just as often, I gave more so Tilly could manage a business trip to pursue new clients or stay with her sister for a week after Margie was diagnosed with breast cancer. In the end, I think we both believed the scales evened out. So, where did we go wrong? The roots of our discontent were planted at the very start of our relationship. We were who we were, but I don't think either of us fully accepted that about the other. We assumed our differences weren't significant, so we didn't fully discuss our expectations. I loved her, and she loved me. What else mattered? As it turns out, a lot more. At least that's what I have left to hold on to now. Who can say if it's true? Tilly always had a better understanding of people than I did. Even if we made a wrong turn at the start, it took a long time for that to come to light. Years, actually. We were living fairly blissful lives, completely unaware of the cracks beneath our marriage. Daddy, why don't Kylie and I get to come too? Annie was precocious and a bit spoiled. Tilly and I adored both our children, and we often included them in our plans, rather than leaving them with babysitters or our parents. But Tilly was about to be honored by her firm's CEO for landing 3 major accounts, a software giant and 2 family offices with over $2 billion in assets combined, so we decided to spend the night at the hotel where the celebration was being held. Because this party is for grown-ups only, sweetie, but I promise we'll go out and celebrate as a family tomorrow night, okay? I wish I could go with you. I know, sweetie, but tomorrow night, you will. Fate is often shaped by insignificant details, the minutiae that, like the blood cells coursing through our veins, are abundant, ever-present, and almost insignificant on their own. Almost. I had parked the car, Tilly's midnight blue BMW 5 Series sedan, and we were in the elevator heading up when I realized I had forgotten the parking ticket. If it had been a municipal lot, I would have just paid the $5, but this hotel charged $40 for overnight parking. So when the elevator reached the lobby, I kissed Tilly, escorted her out, and then pressed the button to return to the second level. I retrieved the ticket and was back in about 5 minutes, with it safely tucked in my coat pocket. When I walked in, I saw Tilly had already taken off her coat and was speaking to a tall man in a dark suit, along with another woman dressed in a vibrant green silk dress. The woman was tall and athletic, but Tilly outshone her effortlessly. My wife wore classic high-quality clothes with a confidence that only added to her appeal. Her proportions were nearly perfect, both in her facial features and her figure. She looked feminine, with full curves that she kept toned with a daily hour-long workout. But it was the intelligence in her eyes and the playful curve of her lips that had captured my heart. As I watched her from across the room, I felt that familiar warmth in my heart, and in other places too. It was fitting that at that very moment, the lie came to light. I see Tilly didn't bring her husband. Do you think Randy is going to hook up with her again tonight? I was standing at the coat check, and 2 men had just turned away as I slipped in behind them so they didn't see me. I recognized Ted Masters. He'd been on Tilly's team for 3 years. I didn't know the other man, but I did know Randy. He was the tall man talking to Tilly. I've never felt anything like I did in that moment. Not before, and not since. I knew I was in unimaginable pain, a torment that might never let me go. The wound was so deep and consuming that I wondered if I could survive it. I had no idea how I would cope, and yet, I didn't feel a thing. My survival instincts kicked in hard. They immediately blocked out the pain, and while I knew I couldn't keep it at bay forever, I was determined not to let myself be humiliated. I can't say if it's the same for all men, but I had no desire to show vulnerability in public. My mind was anything but clear, yet this survival mode allowed me to make decisions that, in hindsight, I'm grateful for. I approached Tilly with a stern expression that she was slow to notice. "The coat check is by the entrance, dear. Could you also get me a glass of white wine on your way back?" I didn't waste time or words. "I'm leaving, Tilly." She looked at me, confused. "I wouldn't want to stand in the way of Randy taking you home tonight. Again." Randy spat out the whiskey he'd just sipped. Tilly's eyes widened as she stared at me, realizing that I knew about her affair. Her face fell and her eyes filled with tears. "Oh no," she whispered, horrified, as I turned and walked away, passing Ted Masters, who had heard everything I said. He looked as pale as a ghost. "Air!" Tilly called after me. "Please wait. I'll grab my coat and be right there." I ignored her and kept walking, quickly but without running. I left the garage without seeing her, and I was parked for such a short time that I didn't even have to pay for parking. Who says the universe doesn't lean towards justice? Thank goodness the girls were staying with Tilly's parents overnight. As I drove, I started making plans. In the worst case, I had a 4 or 5 minute head start. If she made excuses to the execs, I might gain a few more. If she had to wait for a rideshare or a cab, that could buy me up to 10 additional minutes. Still, I couldn't linger at home for long. Like any wounded animal, I wanted to find a safe place, somewhere I could hide my suffering and the shame that would inevitably break me, because I knew it would break me. And soon. I needed to gather a few things and get out, but I wasn't sure I could do it before Tilly got home. I wasn't operating at my best, not even close, and I definitely wasn't ready to face her. Then I laughed. I wouldn't need to go home. I had an overnight bag in the trunk. I wasn't going to hide, but I wasn't going to make it easy either. I found an ATM and withdrew the maximum amount, then checked into a Residence Inn, paying cash for the night. I turned off my phone and left it in the room while I went to the Red Robin next door for a burger, salad, and a draft beer. But just one. I never saw the point in drinking to excess. The evidence was pretty clear against it. I didn't need to punish myself. The pain would handle that well enough on its own. I lingered at Red Robin, hoping that staying in public would help me keep my pain at bay, allowing me to maintain the illusion that I was okay. I dreaded being alone in my room, but something still pulled me toward it. My facade was beginning to crumble. I left some bills on the table and walked out, knowing the waitress would be pleased with the generous tip, but I couldn't bear to wait for my change. As soon as I was behind the locked door, the sobs took over. I grabbed a pillow from the bed and buried my face in it. A howl erupted from the depths of my shattered heart, a sound so raw that it would have shaken anyone who heard it. I screamed and cried, releasing all the torment that twisted inside me. I don't know how long I screamed into that pillow, but when I finally collapsed to the floor, it was drenched in spit, tears, and mucus. I threw it into a corner. There were 3 more on the bed and 2 others tucked away in the closet. I knew I'd need at least some of them before I left in the morning. I had shattered my husband. "I'm leaving, Tilly. I wouldn't want to interrupt Randy from having you tonight. Again." Aaron's voice was icy, but his eyes revealed the pain he was feeling. He knew. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to reach out, to hold him, to comfort him with my love, but I was paralyzed. I don't remember if I said anything as we locked eyes, but when he turned and briskly walked past Ted, I snapped out of my daze. "Aaron! Please wait. I'll grab my coat and be with you in just a moment." He kept walking. I followed him. Apologizing to Jim and Frank crossed my mind, but work was the last thing I cared about at that moment. Aaron was all that mattered. I quickly retrieved my coat from the coat check and pressed the elevator button to the garage repeatedly until the doors finally opened. Once in the garage, I realized my car was gone, so I took the elevator back to the lobby and exited through the front doors. Cabs were scarce, so I called a Lyft on my phone. Ahmad arrived in his blue Prius 4 minutes later. The 20-minute ride felt like an eternity. I texted Jim and Frank, telling them that Aaron had suddenly fallen ill and offering my apologies. They replied almost immediately, expressing their disappointment that we'd missed the recognition but also understanding. They both wished Aaron a speedy recovery. With that taken care of, my focus returned to Aaron. So many thoughts clashed in my mind, but the dominant one was a sense of fear. I knew Aaron had a black and white view of the world. It had never been an issue before. I loved him for his clarity, his integrity, and his intellect, as well as his sense of playfulness and his devotion to our daughters, to me, and to our family. However, while I saw things as conditional, he was always certain. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that if our roles were reversed, it would be much harder for him to move forward than it would be for me. But of course, they never would be. His commitment to me was absolute. My affection for him was just as strong, but bad fidelity didn't seem to have anything to do with our marriage. The intimacy didn't interfere with our time together or affect my feelings for my husband, which only grew stronger and deeper with each passing day. I believed I could be fully committed to Aaron while occasionally having a fling, as long as it didn't impact him, the girls, or anyone else in our family. Not that I was promiscuous. I first slept with Randy about a year ago, nearly 2 years after he joined the firm. Since then, we'd only been intimate twice more, always while traveling, and not on every trip. We never spent the night together. I never left home with the intention of cheating on Aaron. It only happened when circumstances aligned, primarily when I was in the mood, and the other person was also up for some casual fun. Since getting married, I'd had just one other affair, a one-night stand with a stereotypical salesman from a manufacturing company. So, 4 brief encounters over 5 years, totaling maybe 2 or 3 hours. It hardly seemed significant. I've had more massages than that, but I knew Aaron wouldn't see it the same way. When Ahmad dropped me off, the house was dark, and there was no indication that Aaron had been there since we left, not even an hour ago. I moved through our home, the one we had shared with Annie and Kylie, filled with mementos from our families and our life together. I felt a mix of sadness and fear. I was sorrowful that our memories would now include this wound, and apprehensive about the changes it would bring to our marriage, our children, and our family. It would take a long time for our lives to return to how they were, if they ever could. I changed into comfortable sweats, slipped into my sheepskin mules, and went to the family room to wait for Aaron. With no new texts, and without using the Find My Phone feature, I had no way of knowing where he might be. I thought about what to say to him, but nothing seemed right. We needed to talk. Despite my reaction at the hotel, I'm good at processing things in the moment, especially when I can pick up on nuances from tone, eye contact, and body language. If I could sit across from Aaron, or better yet, next to him, I could better gauge his reactions to our discussion. I wasn't sure if I could persuade him to see things my way, but in-person conversations offered a better chance. So I resolved to wait for him, no matter how long it took. I also wanted him to know how much I loved him, and that he was the most important person in my life. After thinking for nearly 15 minutes and drafting at least a dozen texts, I settled on a simple one. Please come home to talk to me. I love you. And then I waited. I slept incredibly well, though I had one final outburst before drifting into a dreamless slumber. When I woke up, it was still early, but it seemed I had slept for around 9 hours. Emotional exhaustion must be the culprit. Despite feeling rested, I still felt off, as if I were slogging through mud both physically and mentally. I took a shower but skipped shaving. Around 7:30, I headed to the original pancake house. The coffee was fresh and hot, and the pancakes were lighter than I had anticipated. The only downside was the particularly greasy sausage patty. Still, with the bill under $20, I left a generous tip. I was restless. Typically, I'd go for a run, but I didn't have my workout clothes and had completely forgotten to pack an extra pair of shoes. Not wanting to stay cooped up in the hotel room, I layered up with a couple of t-shirts, my dress shirt from the night before, and the hoodie I had planned to wear home. I walked the park trails near the lake. The park was mostly empty, save for a few runners and a mom with her 2 boys on the play structure, which gave me ample time to think. And I needed to think. I functioned best when I had clear questions to address. Tilly's mind was agile and processed information quickly. Without an outline to guide and focus our discussion, I would be at a distinct disadvantage. I was unsure how she could justify her infidelity, but I was certain she would attempt to explain. I believed she loved me, or at least thought she did, but reconciling that with her actions was beyond me. I strolled along, listening to the gentle lapping of water against the shore, taking in the scents of the lake, dormant grass, earth, and trees, and breathing in the crisp air. As I walked, I did what I do best. I organized my thoughts into categories and aimed to articulate the key issues. I set aside the trivial, distracting, or irrelevant details and honed in on the questions that might lead me to the answers I needed. I mentally arranged and refined these questions, adding clarifying details. Later, when I returned to my hotel room, I wrote them down. Although I didn't plan on sharing them with Tilly, writing them out always helped solidify my thoughts. First, why did she believe she could disregard her vows and commitments to me? Although I didn't expect a satisfactory answer, I still wanted to understand her reasoning. Second, did she endanger my health by having unprotected intimacy? If so, was it a sign of thoughtlessness or something more reckless? Third, how frequently had she been with Randy? Were there others involved as well? Though she might try to obscure the truth, she was essentially honest and not skilled at lying. I'm good at detecting deceit. Fourth, why Randy? Did she love him? Was she interested in a relationship with him? Did she want to keep seeing him? Fifth, how did her colleagues find out about their affairs? Were they overt about it? Did the company culture promote infidelity? Finally, how did she think we should move forward? While the future path wouldn't be entirely up to her, I was interested in her perspective on what should happen next. I knew I had to confront Tilly, and it needed to be today or tomorrow at the latest. My main concern was the kids' well-being, which meant they needed to come home to a house where both parents were present until Tilly and I figured things out. I felt mentally prepared, though I was still on edge and restless. I needed to calm myself as much as possible and direct all my energy towards the conversation, rather than letting it drain away through fidgeting and anxious thoughts. The hotel had a small gym with a treadmill, so I walked for an hour in my jeans, t-shirt, and dress shoes. Afterwards, I went to Red Robin for a BLT, a side salad, and coffee. With exercise and a meal behind me, I was probably as ready as I could be. I woke up on the sofa with a stiff neck and checked my phone while stretching my head around, but there was nothing significant. I knew Aaron would need time to process his emotions, but the longer he stayed out of touch, the more challenging my task would become. I could vividly imagine him, formulating and testing theories, running through scenarios, desperately trying to make sense of what he didn't understand. It felt strange to be the focus of his contemplation. It also made me sad. Guilt weighed heavily on me. I knew I would be honest when Aaron approached me, and I understood that my honesty would hurt him. I hoped it would also help heal his wound. I couldn't allow lies between us. Lies fester and damage any close relationship. I've told lies to protect someone's feelings when it didn't matter much, but this situation was far too significant. Only the complete truth would suffice. Maybe. Everything depended on Aaron. I brewed some coffee and tried to push the impending conversation from my thoughts. I perform best when others perceive me as underprepared, but anticipating every possible outcome often leaves me feeling deflated. I have a knack for sensing the right moment and understanding intuitively what issues need addressing. I'm also quick with my words. So, I preferred not to waste time overthinking topics or questions that might never arise. I wanted to conserve my energy for when it truly mattered. The morning dragged on without any word from Aaron. I called my parents to check on the kids and asked them to keep the girls for another night, which they were more than happy to do. Then Annie wanted to speak with me. Daddy said we're going to celebrate tonight. Celebrate, sweetie? I'm sorry, but Daddy isn't feeling well today. I promise we'll go out as a family as soon as we can. But Daddy said tonight. Annie resembled me in looks but took after her father in every other way. I know, honey. Sometimes we have to change our plans when things come up. We'll go out as soon as possible. The silence stretched until Mom got back on the line, chuckling. Someone's not too thrilled. She's making the same annoyed face you used to. Thanks, Mom. If anyone can handle her, it's you. Nothing a couple of cookies can't fix. Tell Aaron we hope he feels better soon. I will. Give Kylie a hug for me, too. I threw a load of laundry in and tidied up the kitchen. I didn't want to do anything that I couldn't quickly abandon if Aaron came home. The problem was, there weren't enough small tasks to keep me occupied, so my mind kept fixating on Aaron. I reminded myself that I wouldn't know his reaction until I saw him, so obsessing was pointless, but with nothing else to distract me, I couldn't help it. I considered taking a shower, but I wanted him to see me as soon as he walked in the door. He needed to know he was the most important person in my life, now and always. It might drive me a bit mad, but waiting for him was a small price to pay, so I was willing to do it. Though it might genuinely drive me mad. I despise being idle. With nothing else to do, I summoned memories of Aaron and me. They always brought me joy. Our first date was a classic combination of dinner and going to the cinema. He chose Italian cuisine, the right choice, and suggested the film Inside Llewyn Davis, a more adventurous option. We ate a huge lasagna together, and I took home his spaghetti carbonara. We found that we both liked the Coen brothers' films, although I preferred Raising Arizona, while he was fascinated by Barton Fink. To be honest, I've never really liked Barton Fink. The first time we made love was when my sister Margie and I were living together when I was graduating. Margie's gone away for the weekend. Although we never talked about it directly, it was clear that Aaron and I planned to make love that night. He brought a bottle of Chianti, we ate pizza, and then headed to my bedroom. I felt a little worried, and he admitted that he was too, but he didn't show it. The next morning, I was sore all over. It had been a few months since my last fight, but that didn't stop us from having a couple more classes, and I was still in the shower when Margie returned. His offer came as a surprise to me. Although we discussed marriage, he missed several good moments. For example, Christmas and New Year. Then he found the perfect moment. On an ordinary Thursday evening at home, he made penne alla vodka, which he usually uses on dates. After we watched Arrival, he turned our conversation to the central theme of the film. If you knew that a broken heart was waiting for you, would you still decide to take the risk? While the film focused on his daughter's illness, he linked it to the idea of a potentially unsuccessful marriage. Would you still want to get married knowing it could end badly? When I replied that I would like to, he got down on one knee, took out a ring, and said, "I would too." It seemed almost prophetic to me, although I hoped it wouldn't happen. And then, as if summoned by my thoughts, I heard the garage door open. I took 3 deep breaths, deeper, 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 and sat down at the kitchen table, determined to be the first person he would see when he came in. I opened the door from the garage into the kitchen and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was Tilly sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked tense. I realized I wasn't the only one struggling. This situation was new for her too. "Thank God you're home, sweetheart. I was so worried about you. Are you okay? Can I get you anything? Coffee? Lunch?" Tilly's words came out in a hurried stream, clearly anxious. "No, I've already eaten. I'm going to change and then we can talk." "All right, dear. I'll make some eggs. I've been too worried to eat. Are you sure you don't want any?" "Absolutely sure." As I headed for the stairs, I glanced into the family room. It's usually the emotional heart of our home, but something felt off. The throw on the sectional was bunched up, probably from Tilly, but it was more than that. The usual sense of stability was missing. I had always felt most grounded at home, but now that feeling was gone. I suppose this is another consequence of her betrayal. My home no longer felt special. Our bedroom felt a bit musty too. I unpacked the bag, draping the suit over the chair that seemed to always collect clothes. I tossed my t-shirts and jeans into the hamper with my socks and boxers. I put away my toiletries and hung my hoodie in the closet. I slipped into a pair of track pants and a long-sleeved t-shirt, then added my favorite cotton sweater. I put on my Skechers and headed back to the kitchen. Tilly was at the stove, stirring her eggs, which smelled amazing. No diner could ever match those eggs. The girls adored them. I sat down across from where she had left her mug. Tilly usually preferred to sit together when we had important conversations, but this time was different. We were in opposite corners, which felt unsettling, but sitting across from her would allow me to gauge her reactions. I took a deep, quiet breath and let it out slowly. I mentally reviewed my questions. I was as prepared as I could be. When Aaron walked in, he appeared quite different. His outfit was mismatched. Cordovan wingtips paired with tan jeans and a green hoodie, and he hadn't shaved, which was unusual for him. What struck me most, though, was his eyes. While I didn't expect to see the usual warmth they held when he looked at me, I also didn't see anger or hurt. Instead, there was a sense of distance, an almost clinical detachment. He was clearly in business mode. I needed him in husband mode, the mode where we worked through problems together and made significant decisions for our marriage and family. I had my work cut out for me. "Thank goodness you're home, honey. I was so worried about you. Are you okay? Can I get you something? Coffee? Lunch?" "Number I already ate. I'm going to change. Then we'll talk." Definitely in business mode. "Okay, hon. I'll make some eggs. I've been too worried to eat. Are you sure you don't want any?" "Positive." He headed upstairs. I scrambled 3 eggs with milk and salt, adding some shredded Parmesan. The girls loved their eggs this way. Well, Annie did. Kylie liked them because Annie did. The eggs were cooking slowly when Aaron came back and sat down across from me. I heard him let out a slow breath. This conversation was too important to start in this setting. I needed him relaxed, sitting next to me so he could feel my love and sincerity. I don't want to do this in the kitchen, Aaron. I'll eat quickly and then we can move to the family room. The family room was filled with our pictures, the girls' toys, souvenirs from our honeymoon, and family keepsakes from our parents and grandparents. It was our space of love, and he needed to feel that. I needed it too. The kitchen is fine. Great. I couldn't argue with him on this. I didn't want to argue about anything. We needed connection, not more riffs. But he wasn't making it easy. All right, but can we hold off until I finish my meal? I want to give you my full attention. Of course. I stirred the eggs on my plate. Where did you stay last night? Residence Inn. I see you brought your bag with you. Are you staying here tonight? I haven't made up my mind. I told Annie we'd go out as a family to celebrate your award. I called Mom and asked them to keep the kids another night. I wasn't sure if you'd be home. I could sense Aaron nod. Good decision. How did Annie react? I chuckled, and I could feel him smile as well. Just as you'd expect. It felt good to talk about the girls. I could sense him easing up a bit. I plated the eggs and then took the seat next to Aaron, which seemed to catch him off guard. Feeling a bit bold, I touched his forearm. He flinched. I sighed. I'm sorry, Aaron. He shrugged. I ate quickly, barely tasting the eggs. After putting my plate and fork in the dishwasher, I refreshed my coffee and sat next to him once more. He composed himself and sat up straighter, clearly shifting into business mode. I have some questions about your affair, Tilly. It wasn't an affair, honey. It was just intimacy. Irregular intimacy at that. Call it what you want. To me, it's an affair. Why did you do it? I understand how much I've hurt you, and I'll answer any questions you have. But it meant nothing to me. I want you to see that it doesn't matter, neither to me nor to us. But I don't know how to make you understand that. Why did you do it? The same reason I might choose steak one night and a salad the next. Randy is attractive, funny, humble, just an enjoyable person. We landed a big account, so we went out to celebrate, had a few drinks, and flirted as we usually do. I was feeling attracted, and so was he. He gave me a look. I laughed and got up, and we went to his room. I left after we were done. You still haven't explained why. I had recognized this as our Gordian knot. Normally, our different approaches complemented each other, which was a strength that benefited us regardless of the issue at hand. This time, however, they worked against us. Although we knew each other well through close observation, if we were going to navigate this situation together, we needed to fully understand each other's perspectives. I needed him to realize that Randy, and the salesman, for that matter, was as threatening to our marriage as a gym workout. I'm trying to show you that my time with Randy was trivial, like something I ordered for dinner. It had nothing to do with you, our marriage, or our family. We were just on the road, and it happened. I can disagree with almost everything you just said, Till. It is significant. It affects me, our marriage, and our family, and it didn't just happen. You made promises to me when we got married. Knowing that you broke them has really shaken me. I've always honored my promises to you, Aaron. Always. I love and cherish you more now than ever before. My love for you is so strong it overwhelms me at times. This thing with Randy means nothing. It means everything. What does it mean? I wasn't there. You didn't miss anything. When I came back, I was as loving, attentive, supportive, and engaged as I've always been. It didn't change me, our marriage, or our family in any way. You lied to me. I didn't lie. I've never lied to you about anything significant. Withholding the truth about something important is the same as lying. Exactly. It wasn't important. I don't tell you about my workouts on the road, what I eat for breakfast, or what cars I rent. It felt just like that. It meant nothing. I wouldn't lie to you, hun. Not about anything that matters. He took a slow breath and closed his eyes for a moment, trying to regain his composure. Did you use a codom? His question caught me off guard. I thought I was making progress in gaining his understanding, so this shift in topic threw me off. Nevertheless, I'd promised to answer all his questions. This was going to be difficult, but I knew it would come up eventually. Not the first time. After that, yes. How many times were you with him? I was with Randy 3 times. Aaron tightened his jaw. Part of me hoped his anger would cloud his judgment, but sometimes just getting it all out is the best approach. He didn't overlook the specifics. Were you ever with anyone else? Only one other man. Once. It was many years ago. I met him at a hotel, and we connected. No one else besides him and Randy. I see. He was clearly angry. His eyes were dark and cold, and his expression was tense. But now everything was out in the open. I just needed to help him see how little it affected what we had built together. Have you been tested for STDs? What? No. I used a codom with the first guy, and with Randy, it was only once without. So you've put my health at risk. No, honey, no. I'm sure Randy was clean. He hadn't been with anyone except his wife. What if he lied? What if she's been unfaithful like you? Ouch! I nearly snapped back, but I managed to hold my tongue. I knew I had hurt him deeply. He was exacting some measure of revenge. I sighed, needing to remain understanding, even though it still hurt. It's been over a year since I last had unprotected intimacy, but I'm ready to get tested if that's what you want. It's the least you could do. Good. I'll arrange everything. I want to do everything I can to make you feel better. It doesn't make me feel any better, but it distracts me from one thought. He frowned, then relaxed, and nodded quickly. So you and Randy have been intimate 3 times in the last year. Yeah, but everything is not as you might imagine. This was never planned. During this time, we probably made a dozen trips together. When it happened, it was just because we were both in the mood. We only did it once each time. We've never spent a night together or slept in the same room. Do you love Randy? Do you like it? No, definitely not. I like him, but I love you. I could never love him or anyone else. You are my partner, my one and only. But you're sleeping with Randy, and with other guys. I sighed again. How could I help him understand that there was no emotional attachment in all this? It was just entertainment, like going to a movie or a concert. I couldn't bear to see him so upset about me. I needed to find the right words to heal him. I do not know how to make you understand that these meetings meant nothing. It was just a way to relieve the itch. What can I do to help you understand this? I understand. You believe that intimacy can be casual without attachment or emotion. Yes, you got it. I felt relieved. Maybe we could handle it. I understand, but I disagree. Come on, honey. Sometimes we make love tenderly and sweetly, and sometimes more intensely. Yes, but no matter what, I always do it with you, and only with you. That makes it special. It's special for me, too. I like making love to you. It's wonderful and satisfying. But you're still sleeping with other guys. He was still stuck. I wasn't sure how many ways I could say it, but I had to keep trying. And it means nothing to me. It does to me. He covered his mouth and squinted in concentration, refocusing. Just as I was about to speak, he interrupted. How many people know about it? What do you mean? Nobody knows. He scoffed. People definitely know. How do you think I found out? Of all the questions he could have asked, this was one I hadn't even considered. It never crossed my mind. I figured Aaron had figured it out on his own, given his knack for that sort of thing, but I hadn't thought someone else might have told him. I was stunned. Who told you? No one told me. I overheard Ted Winters mentioning it to someone else last night. It didn't seem like a secret to them. Wow, I was taken aback. My co-workers knew? This was shaping up to be a major disaster. I immediately grasped the potential fallout. My professional reputation was at serious risk. Some of my team knew I'd had an affair with a subordinate, which could lead to HR issues and possible disciplinary action from Jim and Frank. And Randy? He could allege harassment, though I was confident I could handle that. But his wife was present when Aaron revealed everything, so he might be dealing with his own marital crisis right now. People can act unpredictably under stress. I shook my head. I loved my job, but in the end, it was just that. A job. I needed to focus on resolving things with Aaron before dealing with work. Aaron was my husband, my true love, my anchor, and my partner. Our marriage needed fixing. Nothing else mattered nearly as much. I had to tap into his love for me and show him that my recent flings hadn't changed anything between us. Honey, it doesn't matter who else knows. You're aware of the pain you're feeling, and I want to help you heal. You're the one who caused this pain, Tilly. I don't trust you to ease it. His words constricted my heart. Before I could reply, he asked, "What do you see happening here?" Thank goodness. His question had put me on solid ground. I love you now more than ever, Air, and I'll love you even more tomorrow. This is just noise, sweetheart. I know it's painful, but I can love away that pain. It's insignificant compared to the love we have for each other and the family we've built. We still have our wonderful future ahead of us, everything we've always dreamed of. I know you're hurting and we have a lot of work to do, but I believe we can overcome this. I'm more certain than ever that we're meant to spend our lives together. He didn't respond. He stared off into the distance, his expression unmoving. Let's go into the family room and sit together. I miss holding you. We always feel better when we touch. You'll see that nothing has changed. I'm fine staying here. He wasn't moving, not just from the kitchen, but from his business mindset. We didn't see things the same way, and I couldn't bridge that gap through logic. I needed him to understand that our feelings mattered, that our emotional connection was strong and resilient. He was in a lot of pain, and only emotional comfort could heal it. He wouldn't rationalize his way to feeling better. Honey, your pain is raw and overwhelming right now. Please don't shut me out. Let me help you find your center, feel my support. He stood up, so I stood with him. Then he shut me down. I'm not going to make any decisions right now. I need time to think. I'll let you know when I'm ready to discuss things further. I decided to return to the park because I liked being outdoors, especially when I needed to recharge my batteries. However, I left the house without a jacket, and it was late autumn. So instead, I went to the mall and walked around each level twice. After that, I treated myself to a slice of pepperoni pizza from Slice Brothers. It wasn't the most useful choice, but I didn't care. I figured out the key details. Tilly slept with Randy, but she wasn't going to leave me for him. She seemed sincere when she said she still loved me. But considering that she slept with Randy several times and once with a stranger, I couldn't be completely sure. Randy and Tilly's meetings were becoming more frequent, although considering only a few cases, I couldn't be too sure. Tilly appeared genuinely surprised that others knew about her affairs, but the reality was that people were aware of her infidelity. While it wasn't a massive issue, it was something to consider. No one wants to be made a fool of, especially since I would likely encounter these people occasionally if we stayed married. She had been unprotected at least once, showing a clear disregard for the husband who had remained faithful at home. Despite claiming to love me, her actions cast doubt on the sincerity of that love. From everything I had heard, her behavior seemed to be driven by opportunistic, casual intimacy, which I struggled to comprehend. I understood the concept, but I couldn't grasp how someone could view intimacy as unimportant enough to be detached from a committed relationship. I wouldn't judge if there was a clear agreement with a partner, but that was never established between us. We had discussed exclusivity early in our relationship and agreed on it. Either our agreement was poorly defined or Tilly found a loophole that I missed. She wanted to move forward and stay married, but it felt like she was suggesting a no-harm, no-foul approach, focusing on helping me get past my pain rather than addressing her accountability for her actions, probably because she didn't view them as wrongdoing. So, what was my next step? I loved Tilly deeply. I always had. We were in sync about almost everything and deeply connected. Separating would be incredibly painful and challenging on every level. We were best friends, had young children together, and shared close family ties, friends, a home, a vacation cabin, investments, and retirement plans. We also had dreams we had built together. Divorce would be incredibly tough, both during the process and in the aftermath. I couldn't find anything positive about it. However, once it was over, I could work on rebuilding my confidence and perhaps find a partner who shared my values more closely. Though it wasn't guaranteed, I considered myself a decent guy, sincere, hard-working, and dependable. There must be women who would value that enough to stay committed. Tilly's betrayal cut me deeply. I couldn't understand how she thought it was acceptable to cheat on me. Although she seemed genuinely sympathetic to my pain, she never apologized for her infidelity. She merely said it didn't mean anything. While the immediate pain I felt last night had subsided, I knew it would resurface. The feelings of inadequacy, foolishness, and rejection, though they had been cried out and exhausted, were gathering strength and would return with full force. I hoped they would fade with time, but I didn't share Tilly's confidence that they would heal, and I knew I could never trust her not to stray again. Trust is fundamental in any relationship. It's about whether you will do what you say you will do. We take risks with our time, money, and emotions when we trust someone. I had completely trusted Tilly and had honored my commitments to her, but she had not done the same for me. This had skewed the balance of our marriage heavily in her favor, and I couldn't see any way to restore it. I wasn't going to have an affair. For me, intimacy was as much about emotional connection as it was about the physical aspect, so having an affair would mean my commitments to Tilly no longer mattered. That's how I viewed Tilly's infidelity, as her breaking her commitments to me. I wanted her to convince me that staying married was the right choice. I needed her to do that because I couldn't see it on my own. I needed to talk to her again. I drove home. After Aaron left, I took a shower and had a slice of toast with the rhubarb jam his mother had sent at the end of summer. I then sat at the kitchen table, trying to clear my mind while I waited. My thoughts were racing, and I was focused on finding a way to reconnect with Aaron. For me, for him, for our kids. I needed him to understand that our marriage and family were what truly mattered. Compared to that, my encounters with Randy and the salesman were insignificant. I didn't even dwell on them once they were over. A few hours after Aaron had left, I heard the garage door open again. I quickly cleaned up my plate, knife, and coffee cup and moved to the family room. I wanted to avoid having another conversation at the kitchen table. Our family room had an L-shaped sectional, with the TV and shelves containing our family's important books and knickknacks facing the open end. There was no other seating in the room. I took a seat in the middle of the sectional, so Aaron would be within reach no matter where he chose to sit. I hoped that feeling my touch would help him sense my love and commitment to both him and our family. "Till? I'm in here." Aaron hesitated when he saw me, then took a seat closest to the doorway. I couldn't help but smile at him. I loved him deeply. He gave me a brief nod before looking away, his pain palpable. I reached out and gently placed my hand on his shoulder. He tensed but didn't pull away. I squeezed briefly before withdrawing my hand. Small steps. "Where did you go?" "To the mall." "Do you want something to drink?" "No, I'm fine." "All right." I watched him, waiting for him to look up, but he kept his gaze down. "What are you thinking about, hun?" Aaron shrugged. "I just don't get it." "Why?" "I already told you. It was nothing, sweetie. It didn't mean anything. Certainly not related to you. It's got everything to do with me, Till. Everything. No, Aaron. You were here, I was there. It didn't matter to me at all. He sighed with resignation. And there it is, I guess. The difference I never saw before. When we're apart, I still imagine us as together, indivisible, even with the distance. And how does that make sense, hun? We can't be inseparable when we're not together. I smiled as I added, I thought literalism was your thing. Are you making jokes about this? Joking was always our way to ease tension, but it was clear we were more distant than I'd feared. That realization hit me hard. I'm sorry. I don't know how to handle this, Air. I'm struggling to show you how little it means. I feel like our marriage is at risk. I see you're hurting and it hurts me too. But I don't know what to say to make it right. Why did you do it? He was so fixated on the intimacy that he wasn't hearing me. So I tried again. I told you, honey. I was feeling horny. Randy was too. The situation was right, and it just happened. It doesn't mean anything. Aaron sighed, and it seemed like all his energy drained away. Usually he sat upright, but now he just slumped. It doesn't mean anything to you, but it means a hell of a lot to me. Why? I almost shouted in my frustration. It had nothing to do with you. If you hadn't overheard Ted last night, you'd still be content with our marriage, right? He shrugged. Yes, you would. You know it. And I'm still the same woman, still your wife, still committed to your happiness and our family. I haven't changed since yesterday when you were happy with me. I don't understand why you can't see that. And I don't understand why you can't see that while you might be the same woman you were yesterday, I thought you were the same woman I married before you slept with someone else. You promised exclusivity, Till, and you broke that promise. But I have been exclusive. I've never loved anyone but you, Aaron. Ever. That was true when we were dating, engaged and married. Every single day since I met you, I've never loved anyone else. I thought our conversation was finally making progress, but Aaron only looked more despondent. He nodded, but it was a resigned gesture. He tried to get up, but I moved quickly, wrapping my arms around him and pressing my forehead into his shoulder. No! Stay with me! We can fix this. We have to fix this. He relaxed enough to stay seated, but remained tense, unwilling to fully embrace me. There's nothing to fix, Till. I can see that our marriage has always been this way. What do you mean by that? To me, our commitments were supposed to be complete, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and physical. You never saw it that way. You're emotionally committed, maybe even intellectually and spiritually, but not physically. We were never in balance, Till. I thought we were, but we weren't. And I don't see how we can ever achieve that balance. But we are in balance, honey. I know you love me. I feel it every single day. And I love you just as much. No, you don't, or you wouldn't have cheated. Again, this. Aaron was such a smart guy. Why couldn't he see it? I needed him to understand. What I did with Randy and that other guy had nothing to do with you. As soon as it was over, it was out of my mind. I don't care about them at all. I care about you. I love you more than anyone else I've ever met. You are my perfect partner. Tilly, our marriage is a part of me wherever I go. It's integrated into my identity. You and the kids, especially you, are always at the forefront of my thoughts whenever I make a decision. I consider everything with you in mind. Everything. When I decide what to have for lunch, I think about our dinner plans. When someone offers me game tickets, I check my schedule for our plans. Then I consider what you might want to do with me during that time, and only if there's no conflict do I think about whether or not I want to go. It's automatic. But when you were choosing to be with another man, where was the thought of me? At best, you didn't think of me at all. If you did think of me and still went through with it, then you'd be calculating, and I don't think you're that. Calculating? That stung deeply. It hurt more than I could have imagined. Tears welled up in my eyes. He was so far from the truth. I did love him, more than anything. How could I convince him? Aaron, you have to understand how much I love you. You need to. Open your heart, my love. You'll see the truth there. I don't think you want to see what's in my heart right now, Till. Trust your feelings, Air. Look into your heart, and you'll see how much I love you. Love isn't the only feeling in there, Tilly. It's not even the most dominant. Hurt, anger, fear, and grief are all there. A lot of grief. But why? I squeezed him again, but he stayed rigid. Let me in, Air. Let me in. We can heal this. We really can. I'll heal, and you'll undoubtedly be part of that process, but I don't see it happening right now. We're out of balance, Till, and until I can figure out if we can ever regain that balance, I can't be with you. He gently pulled my arms away and stood up. I'm going to pack a few things. I'll let you know where I end up. This was a nightmare. I watched him walk away, and his entire posture seemed defeated. We needed to fix this. But he had to want to fix it, and it didn't look like he did. I was frustrated, upset, and scared. How could I reach him? I returned to the residence inn and sent Tilly a text when I checked back in. I had listened to her carefully and absorbed everything she communicated, both what she said and what she left unsaid. For Tilly, the emotional commitment was paramount. She genuinely believed that her encounters with other men were insignificant and occurred far from our marriage. She came back convinced that she remained faithful to me because those encounters never affected her feelings for me, our kids, or our family. To her, the intimacy was separate from our commitments and plans. I never noticed her infidelity because she showed no remorse. To her, it was just intimacy, no different from going out for drinks with friends. But that view was completely at odds with my understanding of marriage. I was open to reconciliation, but I couldn't see how we could achieve it. Since I would never cheat on Tilly, the only way forward was to accept and forgive her betrayal. However, this would always leave our marriage unbalanced. Coupled with her lack of remorse and her belief that exceptions are acceptable, I had no assurance that she wouldn't repeat her actions. I knew I couldn't handle that. Although she didn't think she had betrayed me, I felt deeply hurt, and the pain seemed endless. How do you cope with your partner seeking intimacy elsewhere? This is the person whose love is most crucial to you. You've built your life around her and your marriage, committed for life through having children and sharing a home. You trust her with your deepest fears and insecurities, believing that her love, manifested in sharing your bodies, is real and exclusive. You believe she loves only you because she is intimate with only you. Until you realize that protecting and valuing that love isn't as important to her as you thought. Until you understand that you're not enough for her. Until you realize that she didn't consider you when she sought a fleeting physical pleasure after a professional triumph. Until you see that she wouldn't sacrifice a momentary thrill for the sake of your marriage. The gap between your expectations and her actions is vast, and the pain from this disparity is correspondingly immense. That night, I once again buried my face in my pillows and screamed my emotional pain, and I did the same for many nights after. It was the only way I could let it out, and it left me utterly drained. I spoke with my boss and broadly explained that my marriage appeared to be falling apart and that I needed some time off to deal with it. Maxine had always been understanding, and this time was no exception. She just asked me to monitor my email while I took the time I needed. We did go out with the girls to celebrate Tilly's promotion, and the children's excitement helped us keep the evening light and relatively normal. We returned home together, and Tilly and I went through our usual bedtime routine with the girls. After they were tucked in, read to, and kissed multiple times, I grabbed my coat. "When are you coming home, Air?" "I don't know." "I miss you." "Yeah, same here." "Can we talk about it?" I don't think there's anything left to discuss. I know what you think. Now I need to figure out what I think. Come home, honey. Let me work through this with you, like we always do. We make a great team. That won't work this time, Till. Every night after work, I went to the house, and in the mornings on my days to get the girls ready. We wanted to keep things as normal as possible for as long as we could. Weekends were tougher, but we managed. I got there before Annie and Kylie woke up. They no longer got to surprise us in bed, but with everything else remaining constant for them, they didn't seem to notice. I felt myself drifting away from Tilly, and she sensed it as well. She pleaded with me to come back home and tried to convince me that we could move forward together as we always had. One evening, after we had put the girls to bed, she took me by surprise. "Let's go to counseling, honey. We're stuck, and we need help. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll leave us for good." I found it interesting that she felt I was going to leave when I believed she hadn't invested in our marriage as much as I had. My second thought was that our differing viewpoints made a compelling case for trying therapy. She found a counselor, and after a brief review of online ratings and her qualifications, I agreed. Pratishta Bhandari was a grounded, heavy-set woman with bright, engaging eyes and a calming voice with a slight accent. Her approach wasn't overly direct. She took time to delve into our thoughts and feelings on the issues at hand. However, once the foundational work was done, she didn't hesitate to ask probing questions that went straight to the heart of the matter. She was also very articulate and precise, especially when discussing emotions. It was near the end of our second session that Pratishta pinpointed the core issue. We had recounted our history and my recent realization of Tilly's infidelity. There were no revelations for either of us, but Pratishta was now grasping the dynamics of our marriage. "Please correct me if I'm mistaken, but it seems, Tilly, that you believe your promises to Aaron remain intact because you feel that the intimacy encounters with other men didn't impact your emotional commitment to him." Tilly nodded and smiled. "Yes. And Aaron, you feel that those promises were broken because you consider them to include physical fidelity, not just emotional fidelity." "Yes." "And Tilly, you don't feel you need forgiveness because you don't believe you did anything wrong." Tilly frowned. "No, I did hurt Aaron, and I regret that. I want his forgiveness for the hurt I've caused." "So you're apologizing for having intimacy with other men because it hurt Aaron?" "Exactly. I'm very sorry for that. I never intended to hurt my husband." "Aaron, how do you feel about what Tilly is saying?" "I understand that she's sorry for causing me pain. She's not a monster. She acknowledges the hurt and regrets it. However, she hasn't apologized for the acts themselves because she doesn't see them as wrong." "That's not true," Tilly interjected. "I do regret those actions. I didn't want to hurt you." "Tilly, let Aaron finish expressing his thoughts and feelings. You'll have your turn too." "No, I'm done. She only regrets them because they hurt me. She doesn't view them as betrayal on their own. I do, and that makes me doubt whether I can ever move past this pain. It would destroy me if it happened again." "But I wouldn't. Tilly, you are a wonderful, intelligent, and kind person, but you seem to believe in exceptions and exceptions to the rules, whereas this is a strict boundary for me. It always has been, which is why it hurts so much to know you don't view our marriage the same way I do. If I have to shield myself from you, that's not the marriage I want. You're not a bad person, Tilly, but I don't think you're the right person for me. Honey, please give me a chance. I can make this work." "Maybe you can. But do you truly believe there will never be any exceptions for the rest of your life? That there's absolutely no situation where you might consider being with another man?" Tilly has always been honest, though not always fully transparent. I saw the exact moment she considered a possible exception, and she saw in my eyes that I noticed, and I think she realized in that moment that we were finished. I can hardly believe that Aaron and I are divorced. We were soulmates, perfectly matched, yet now we're no longer married. I was there for every moment, from that dreadful night at the hotel, and it felt like we just kept falling deeper into trouble each day. I still can't fully understand what went wrong, especially considering the smallest reasons. I never gave anyone else the affection I had for Aaron, not even a little. I was convinced that counseling would help us. Pratishta made us aware of our disconnect, and I believed we could overcome it, but Aaron couldn't see a way forward. It seemed he just stopped trying. I begged him repeatedly to come back, to rekindle our intimacy, to trust in the love we had built for ourselves and our children. But he remained firm in his decision. I always see possibilities and consider myself quite creative. So when Aaron asked me if I could envision a scenario where remaining monogamous might not apply, naturally I could think of several. I imagined situations like being stranded after a plane crash, being coerced to save Annie's, Kylie's, or Aaron's life, swapping partners with Aaron's consent, or even experiencing a rare, overwhelming connection. I could probably come up with even more, but these were just exceptions. By definition, their likelihood was extremely low. I tried to explain this. But the chance isn't zero, Till, Aaron replied, and with each potential exception, the overall risk of you being unfaithful increases. I can't live with that uncertainty hanging over our marriage. I can't. You've already devastated me, Tilly. I don't have the strength to endure another blow. And so, he devastated me in return. I was deeply depressed for months after he filed for divorce, but I had to stay strong for our girls and to keep our firm's clients happy. I didn't have the luxury of wallowing in my grief, so I adopted a fake-it-till-you-make-it approach, putting on a brave face every day. Yet the nights alone were tough, and when Aaron had the girls, since we shared custody, alternating weeks, I often found solace in pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream, and I cried a lot. Aaron wasn't faring any better. I knew him well enough to see the deep sadness he was hiding. His once jovial and easygoing demeanor had vanished, and he appeared lost and contemplative whenever he wasn't engaged in conversation. Despite my repeated pleas for him to come back to me, he refused. I eventually realized he needed to come to that decision on his own. Nothing I said could change his mind. It was at this point that I truly understood how much I had hurt him. He had always turned to me for advice and trusted my opinions, at least he used to. Now, that trust was gone. By the time I was ready to start dating again, Randy was long gone. He, too, was divorced. His ex-wife, Trish, had clearly heard Aaron that night, and Randy was left stunned, unable to spin the situation in his favor. He fared much worse in his divorce compared to ours. While Aaron and I had ended our marriage on friendly terms and stayed amicable for the sake of the kids, Trish had gone all out against Randy. Despite having young children, she secured custody and left him with the financial burden. Randy left our firm when a sales manager position opened up at a rival company in Chicago. I sympathized with him, feeling that the affair had been costly for everyone involved, even if the intimacy hadn't been worth the price. I didn't face any backlash at work. I gave Jim and Frank a toned-down version of why I divorced and reassured them that I wouldn't jeopardize the firm again. Although they expressed disappointment, my value as a rainmaker likely played a significant role in their leniency. I began dating about a year after the divorce was finalized. Men started asking me out as soon as word of my pending divorce spread, but it took me that long to accept that my marriage was truly over. Feeling quite lonely, I tentatively re-entered the dating scene, agreeing to lunch dates with several men. I didn't sleep with any of them, even though I was very tempted. I kept hoping Aaron might return and wanted to be able to tell him I had remained faithful. The irony was not lost on me. Unfaithful during the marriage, but loyal afterward. Intimacy still didn't hold much significance for me, but it clearly mattered a great deal to Aaron, and I wanted to offer him something of worth if he ever decided to come back. After spending another year apart, It seemed Aaron had found a new sense of stability in his life. I wasn't sure if he was dating anyone. We hadn't talked about his relationships. And although I never directly asked the girls, their accounts of their time with Aaron didn't mention any women. When we saw each other, he appeared settled, and while he might not have seemed particularly happy, he at least looked content. By that time, I had given up on us ever getting back together, which made me more open to new possibilities. That's how I ended up with Bob. We met through work, he ran a family office, and I pitched our services to him. To celebrate the deal, I took him out to dinner, and then he invited me to dinner to continue our conversation more personally. Bob was a widower of 4 years, about 10 years older than me, with no children. He wasn't against the idea of having kids, but his wife had been unable to conceive. After grieving for 2 years, he gradually began to open his heart again. I could relate to his experience. Bob played a significant role in healing me. Although I still bear the emotional scar from Aaron's rejection, Bob's kindness, thoughtfulness, and sense of humor helped mend it. He wasn't conventionally handsome, neither tall nor short, and rather plain, but his heart was warm and generous, and he enveloped me with his affection. He also had a nuanced view of things, suggesting that a perfect marriage could hardly be undone by a few instances of meaningless intimacy. I was anxious about how Aaron would react when I told him about Bob and me moving in together, not knowing how I would feel if Aaron moved on first. Our conversation turned out to be quite anticlimactic. Aaron responded graciously. "I'm glad you found someone, Till," he said with a genuine smile. "You've always had good taste in partners, so I'm sure he's a great guy." I couldn't help myself. I reached out and hugged him, but he stiffened in my embrace. I sighed inwardly. He would never let go of the pain I had caused him. Bob and I bought a 4-bedroom house close to where Aaron and I had lived. We were looking for a fresh start. During and after the divorce, I had stayed in our old house to keep things as stable as possible for the kids, while Aaron had bought a 3-bedroom condo nearby in the same school district. The kids adapted to Bob almost effortlessly, likely because he was so easygoing and Annie was still a few years away from teenage rebellion. I still think about Aaron frequently. I want him to find happiness. I hope he will someday. I try not to linger on what could have been. If only he had been more flexible, if only he had been more open, if only he had allowed me to help him heal from his pain. But then again, he wouldn't have been Aaron, my almost perfect partner. I had met Bob before, but our interactions had been limited to polite exchanges during drop-offs and pickups of the girls. He seemed like a decent guy, albeit a bit dull, which is saying something coming from me. I was at his and Tilly's house for Kylie's 8th birthday party, and we were the only 2 men present. Tilly and a few other mothers were managing the group of rambunctious girls racing around the yard, and neither they nor the kids needed the company of 2 older guys, so we ended up sitting on camp chairs on the patio, watching the chaos. We had discussed the twins' struggles, assessed the Vikings' prospects, lamented the recent heat wave, and exhausted our supply of trivial topics. After a brief silence, sipping our Molsons, Bob finally spoke. "I don't want to put you on the spot, Aaron, but how did you let Tilly slip away? Just look at her. She's beautiful, intelligent, fun. She's an amazing mother, a fantastic cook, and an incredible lover. She's got it all." I had spent a lot of time reflecting on this since our marriage fell apart. Bob's observations were accurate. Tilly was an impressive woman, but she had also deeply hurt me, and it took years of therapy for me to realize that I was better off without the constant doubt she brought into my life. A partner should make things easier and uplift you, not introduce insidious doubt that poisons every moment and adds stress. I couldn't live with that, and my initial grief had clouded that realization. Once I came to terms with it, I felt a profound sense of peace. I shrugged and replied, "We just weren't the right match for each other." I like to think I'd fight to keep someone like that, not let her go. "Well, I hope you never have to face that, Bob." He shook his head, clearly not understanding. I smiled and took another sip of my beer. They were a better fit than Tilly and I had ever been. That realization didn't bother me. I was over Tilly, and I was glad she was over me. Despite the pain I felt from her betrayal, I didn't want her to suffer. She never intended to hurt me. She was just the wrong partner for me. Besides, I had something of a secret. I met Deirdre, or Dee, about 9 months ago. Since my divorce, I had been working on self-improvement by taking cooking classes, joining a book club, and purchasing a road bike for cycling. Dee and I crossed paths during a group ride. We rode at a similar pace and ended up spending most of that ride together. We chatted over coffee after the ride and met up again 2 weeks later. Dee was witty and knowledgeable about many of my interests, so I invited her to join me for a stroll through the art museum and lunch the following Sunday. That led to dinners, movies, and after 5 evening dates, we became intimate. Really good intimacy. Dee works as a project manager for Verizon, has been divorced for 6 years, and has a 10-year-old daughter named Nadine, who is between Annie and Kylie in age. Dee is tall and slender, usually exuding playful energy, but becoming all business when it's time to get things done. As a project manager and mostly single mother, her ex has Nadine every other weekend. She is highly organized and a bit bossy. We discovered we shared many interests. Both our playlists included The Strokes and Muse. Pulp Fiction was our top film choice. I liked it for Willem Dafoe, while Dee was a fan of Uma Thurman, and we were both pragmatically progressive in our politics. After all, we live in Minnesota. When we were together, time seemed to fly by unnoticed, and we both valued monogamy. We had been keeping things discreet, mainly to ensure that we were a good match before involving the kids. I'm not sure how long Tilly had been seeing Bob before she introduced him to the girls, but I wanted to be certain that Dee and I were in it for the long haul before making that move. We were almost there. Dee and I had visited Duluth a couple of weeks ago to meet my parents at their summer cottage. She charmed them, and we left feeling very encouraged. To avoid overshadowing Kylie's birthday, we decided to wait until the following week to share the news with our daughters. We weren't sure when the in-person meeting would happen, but it wouldn't be much longer after that. And then, who could say for sure? The end of my marriage to Tilly was as difficult as I had feared, but I emerged from it feeling stronger and wiser. With Dee, I felt secure and completely at ease. No matter how I looked at our relationship, it felt balanced and true, and I was optimistic about keeping it that way.